Welcome to the Beautiful Step Podcast,
where we
run,
stomp,
tiptoe,
and tango into the confusing
but beautiful
world of togetherness. We are your hosts, Kris
and Charity.
Now, let's go make our together even better.
Okay, no one ever makes it big in a small town.
I would agree with that.
Really? Well, I mean, you have an anomaly like Jewel, who came out of Homer, Alaska. Come on.
Yeah, but she had to leave Homer, Alaska to make it big. She didn't make it big when she was in Homer, Alaska.
Really?
No one knew of her then.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I did listen to her on, Joe Rogan.
I think she went to Seattle, like at the same time the grunge scene was happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Anyway, so no one makes it big in a small town. And what's crazy is like Jacob and Chelsea were here last week. Wenlow, shout out. And they're moving from Atlanta to LA.
Yes.
And my prediction, let's just do it on video right here.
Okay, predict it.
My prediction is that within a year, they'll probably have 1 million followers.
Yeah, they're already at 200,000 Instagram followers.
They're just crushing the game on that.
But they're getting a lot of opportunity to play with bigger artists and go on tour and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I based that on Ralph Costelli.
Yes.
Because I watched Cole go from, the hard struggle in Australia, creating Ralph Costelli, all the albums, to moving in LA, sleeping in his car, and his career absolutely took off. Am I right?
He was sleeping in Airbnbs, but yeah.
He had a moment.
He did have moments of...
That's like a proud father moment. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, you know what, man? You did what it took.
Yeah.
You're hard, brother.
Well, he went... I think Sydney's a big town, right? But it's not necessarily a music town, even though he went to music school there.
Hey, AC/DC came out of Australia.
Okay, well...
ABBA. ABBA, even if they didn't, let's just say they came out of Australia.
Absolutely epic. I'm not really an AC/DC fan, but ABBA, sure, yeah.
What?
But, hey. But yeah, I think you're right. Like Cole, the move from Anchorage, Alaska to LA essentially after college was the thing that really catapulted his career. And there's...
Why though? Like walk me through. I know we've been talking about it, but give me like some actual reasons here.
Yeah. And I want to talk about this because we were talking with Jacob and Chelsea about this as they're making this big move and we're predicting that they're just going to blow up.
Right.
And they knew they had to make the move. They were kind of pushed into a corner of like, if you need to take it to that next step, like you can only get so far in Atlanta, which is known for like, as my understanding is more hip hop genre and that kind of thing. If you want to make it big, you're going to have to take the leap to somewhere else where people are doing kind of what you're doing.
Right. And we were telling them this.
Yeah. Because
and they were getting input. People were telling, not just us, but other people were telling them.
Oh yeah. That they would have to go probably to LA to make it big. And so, but it came on the heels, like they came and stayed for a few days on the way to LA. And it came on the heels of me having just finished this incredible book.
I love it.
Like probably my favorite book I've read this year so far, most influential book of my life.
All right, give us the name and title. We're going to put it in this
Stephen Johnson's Where Good Ideas Come From.
Yeah.
Absolutely life-changing book.
Where Good Ideas Come From. Yeah.
If you're creative at all, like, and I'm not just saying like a typical creative, but if you're a person who is entrepreneurial or innovative or creative in your thinking and you kind of like those type of things, this is a must read for you for sure.
Okay.
But it's a fascinating book. And I was telling Jacob and Chelsea about the concept and some of the things that were, and I even took out my notebook. This is like a notebook. I have many of these. They all are the same color. And I write in them every morning as I read, the notes and takeaways.
Okay. How many books did you read last year?
Oh, I don't know. I always read about 100. But this book was so good. And there's pages and pages and pages of notes from that book in here. And I believe the concepts really apply to them. And probably other people might find it helpful as well, because for me, it was really mind blowing.
Okay. Give me the concept.
Okay. So he starts out the book with this crazy thing that I had never heard of. I didn't pay much attention in science class. I don't know if you did. I was terrible at science. But he starts out with this thing. Max Kleber, who's like a scientist in the 50s, is basically, I think he was at UC Berkeley maybe. He was trying to do a formula for agriculture feed. So he was trying to be able to tell farmers,
oh, right,
how much feed are you going to have to buy for this size cattle? and how much meat will it produce at the end, so that they
Right.
would be able to predict, like, okay, this amount of feed produces this amount of meat.
Right. They're like, look, you want to sell 600 pounds of beef? It's going to take 40 pounds of grain or 4,000 pounds of grain.
Right.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what he figured out, and actually, because what came to discover, right, is that metabolism slows down as an organism gets larger.
Okay, say that again.
Metabolism slows down as an organism gets larger.
Stop. This is tangential. Is it, that is why, I mean, it's kind of hard for people who are really, overweight to lose weight, maybe, or what?
Well, yeah, your metabolism slows.
Or wait, you get heavier and heavier and heavier quicker, maybe.
Right.
Because your metabolism has really crashed.
Well, totally.
The bigger
right.
you
I mean,
get.
not even just the bigger, the older, like all those things play.
Yeah.
But yes, that's
The
one of the
bigger
factors.
you get, you can get bigger and bigger exponentially.
Right.
Yes.
So, but what they did when studying all these mammals, and they started out just believing it was about mammals, but now it's called the Kleiber's Law or Kleber's Law. I don't know how you say his name, but, and what it does is it proves that actually there is a certain scaling that happens. So let's say a mouse is 10 times smaller than a cat or 100 times smaller than a cat.
Okay. A mouse is 100 times smaller than a cat, right?
Okay. Well, let's just.
I love it. Go.
Okay. Let's say that it is. Well, it doesn't need 100 times the amount of food. The cat doesn't need 100 times the amount of food as the mouse.
Oh,
it
right.
actually doesn't. So it's not a 1-for-1 ratio. They need 75% or 70%, roughly 75% of the same feed to keep the metabolism going.
Aha.
So this is what they discovered, right? Is that every mammal that has, every mammal that has a heart has about 1 billion heartbeats in its life.
Okay.
Okay. Really small things, even like flies or little small, insects or small animals have really fast heartbeats.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Compared to like an elephant who has a very slow heartbeat.
Or a grizzly bear. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
Tangential. You're in the Alaska wilderness. A bear comes up on you. You shoot the bear. It runs after you for a while.
Because it's still.
Because the heart only beats like once a minute or something like this.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we all have about 1 billion heartbeats in our lifetime. And
all mammals.
All of us. And the fact that your heartbeat is beating faster doesn't mean that you have less heartbeat. It actually means you have the same amount of heartbeats. It's just you're using them up faster, so you have a shorter lifespan. This is why, which is why, and maybe people who paid attention to science knows this. I didn't, but a fly might live 5 days, but an elephant's going to live 50 years.
Wow.
Because the speed at which their heart is beating is using up their lifespan a lot faster.
Sure.
We notice this even in life, like if your heart is beating faster or harder because you have bad health,
blood pressure, all that stuff, like your
resting heart rate is higher.
Yeah, Lance Armstrong had, I think, a resting heart rate of like 48 beats a minute or something, just chilling out. And most people are like healthy people are 65 or something, or 60. I don't know what it is, but it's remarkably different.
Yes. So
everyone knows Lance Armstrong's going to live way past.
Unless somebody kills him for lying all the time. But I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying, yes, for his health, absolutely,
yes, that
right?
Was just being you being funny.
I'm just feeling silly.
Yeah.
But the idea is that, right, it's the amount of time it takes you to use up those same heartbeats.
Got you.
So he takes this and he says, okay, so if we know, even in plants, that it's going to take something that's 100 times larger, only about 70% of the energy is needed for that scale.
Yeah.
So they called it negative quarter power scaling. So every time you scale up that amount, you're not going to do a 1-for-1 scale. It's going to be like 3/4 of the scale. So
gotcha.
Negative quarter power scaling, Kleiber's Law. That was really mind-blowing to me because I didn't know any of that stuff.
Right.
But then this crazy thing happens, and I wrote down his actual name. There was a scientist that came along, and he's actually I think a physicist, Jeffrey West. And he said, okay, do we think that this law, this was much later on than the 50s, but he said, do we think that we could apply this law to
the quarter scaling law?
The negative quarter power scaling. Yeah. do we think we could apply the same law to large metropolitan areas? Could we say that if we took, inventory of everything that was happening in a large city, if the city got larger, will it slow down?
And I would say yes in so many ways.
Yeah,
so many ways.
So what he did was he said, okay, let's take everything from the length of the gas lines to the, light systems, to every system, the traffic, the road mileage, all that stuff. Yeah. Take all those systems and then say,
not to mention decision making as a, politicians and, bureaucracy and all that stuff. It just goes, the bigger something like that gets.
Exactly, right? Yeah. You think, well, the bigger a bureaucracy gets, the slower it gets. Well, we've all kind of recognized
good Lord. Try running a business with more than 7 or 8 people. It's forget it.
So he thought, okay, I wonder if Max's law or Kleber's law will actually be the same. It'll be the same mathematical equation, because when we're looking at even down to the cellular level, this applies. This negative quarter power scaling applies. Can we look at it in these systems? So what he did was he mapped them out. They took 200 cities around the globe, large metropolitan areas, and they said, oh, okay, let's measure this. Are they getting slower?
Right.
Sure enough, same mathematical equation applied. It was, if you build out cities, all their infrastructure, the larger they get by that same amount of scale, are going to be slowed down by the same rate.
The quarter
power
negative
scale,
quarter
right.
scale. Yeah.
So we think, okay, well, that makes sense.
Sure.
Totally makes sense. What was really interesting, though, is they also measured things that had to do with innovation. So they measured things like patents applied for and music produced and amount spent on PR or R&D budgets. And they did all these other things, anything related to innovation. They also mapped things like crime and other things like this. And they said, does the same thing apply? If it's larger, does it,
does it apply to innovation, creativity?
What they found was anything related to actual innovation and ideas or the spreading of something.
Mm-hmm.
It was the exact opposite.
What do you mean?
It was a positive quarter power scaling.
So it's faster.
Much faster.
Ding, ding, ding,
so
ding,
get
ding.
this. I mean, this was I actually wrote down this crazy stats. Listen to this. A city that's 10 times larger isn't 10 times more creative. It's 17 times more creative.
Ooh.
As measured by things like patents, things produced, innovations, inventions, all that kind of stuff. As measured, 17 times more. So it's not just 1 for 1. It's 1 1/4, baby. 1 3 or whatever. 1 3/4. Wait, 1 1/4. It's a little bit different than the quarter.
Right.
But it's the opposite direction. And then they get this. A city that's 50 times larger than a small town is not 50 times more creative. It's 130 times more.
Yo.
This is the one that really, I was so floored.
Okay, go.
The average resident of a large metropolitan area, like a big city with more than 5 million or more people.
Okay.
The average resident there, as measured by those production things like innovations, budgets, scientific creativity,
proof.
Actual production, is 3 times. The average resident is 3 times more innovative than the average resident of a town of 100,000 people.
Just the average, one girl
3 times more innovative than the average resident of a town of a person of 100,000 people. That to me was I think what we're talking about is it explained to me why our son had to move from Anchorage, Alaska, a town of 250,000 people, to Los Angeles, a town of millions and millions of people, and why that naturally made him more successful in the area where he was he was still working at the same, he was still working a lot, but just being in the area actually made him more innovative. And
it's like his effort counted 3 times more.
Yes.
Wow.
And here's why I think that happens. And this is important for us to understand because we have done this. We have started record labels, had production companies, recording studio. You've sewed into this stuff a lot. So we understand what it's like to try to do things like that.
It was a mom and pop shop, supporting local artists, doing everything we can for the local community. 100%.
We've tried to start a creative collective, which was as successful as it probably could be in a town that size.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing now is that's the reality of it. That's the scientific proof is it's as successful as something can be in a town that size. And you want to say that shouldn't be the case. Well,
everybody wants this out of nowhere hometown hero guy who's, this is definitely an Americana idea, like some guy out there working in a field and he's swinging some sort of hatchet and he's like, yeah, how did you know he was going to be the next Babe Ruth or something?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Right.
Usually not going to happen. Or he might be discovered there, but in order for him to actually get to where he's going to be, they always take him out of the woods and put him in
Yeah. So this is important. And I think but it is important for relationships. And that's why I wanted to talk about it because it really does change how we see things and how we should operate. And here's where I want to go with it. If you think about it, we think of ideas as, and this book brilliantly talks about this, Stephen Johnson's book. He says, we think of ideas as the Einstein, the light bulb moment.
Epiphany.
Where it's yes, epiphany. All of a sudden, somebody gets this brilliant idea. Elon Musk just thought of electric vehicles. And that was the first thing, if you don't know anything about that, you would think, but that's the first thing that happened. But we think about that way about innovation all the time. We think, or creativity, we're somebody just came up with this crazy, brilliant idea. And we're all waiting for our next huge, light bulb moment.
Right.
And he makes the point in this book that is not how any innovation happens. Usually, actually, it's just the next nudge. It's not a leap, it's a nudge. Because it's the next person who was able to put together the thing off the person that was before them. So YouTube wasn't able to figure out actually how to launch YouTube until someone else figured out how to enhance streaming to the level where it could go fast enough for YouTube to have a channel.
And so YouTube was streaming? Powerful data,
they
processing.
Had tried to do
what if we
before.
put a movie or something on here?
Yeah. So his point was that it's not that one person has this great idea. Usually what's happening is that there's enough people around watching the innovation happen that usually 3 or 4 people in different areas will be getting that next nudge. And then one person will just kind of be the first person to put it out there.
Mind blown right now because my brother-in-law, who is a successful architect now, he and his frat friends at the very beginning of what felt like the beginning of the internet almost.
It was in the early 90s.
It was in the early 90s. They got together and these guys are all graduates of UW.
Yep.
So,
smart guys.
Yeah. And instantly that gives you credit on the West Coast if you graduated, UW. And they got together and they put this thing together called Photo Zone. And what they would do is send people to parties with cameras, take pictures of people, and then they would bring them back and upload them on the internet, and people could buy the photos.
Yes.
And
you could log on for the party, and then you could go and
you could log on and you could download your photo. You pay for the photo. It was genius. It was absolutely genius. And it was they got all these investors and everything like that. And here's it's obviously gone.
Right.
And here's my contention is I have to believe that was one of those nudges along the way that made what Facebook is now, right?
Instagram.
Those are Instagram, all of those things. That's how ideas work, right?
Yes.
I want us to be original. I want us to be creative. Even the word creative, that people use for themselves is a little presumptuous because it's you're more of a combiner than you're more of a collabor than you are the creator.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you're creative. I've always struggled with that. Yeah, we're all creative, right? And the art of life and the art of creativity really is so much of what are you doing with it, with what you have in front of you?
Yes.
It's so important.
Yeah, you're only going to be able to string together different thoughts. You're not going to create all new thoughts in a string. You're going to string together a bunch of other thoughts that are not new and maybe add a little twist to it to make it a new innovation.
Yeah, it's like God would look at you and be like, where were you when I created electricity? Thinking like, you're so good at the electric guitar or something. It's like, wait, this is an amalgamation and it's a network, right?
Yes.
There's no such thing as like just some solo idea. It's like ideas are collective sort of networks.
Yes, that's exactly it. And what I love about what he says in the book is he says, you need to consider it as your adjacent possible.
Ooh, what?
Meaning, what is next to you is what's going to be possible. The people who are not next to the next step, they're not in the proximity of the next step.
Oh, right.
They're the ones everybody looks at and says they were too early to the game. Like they had an idea, but like we don't have a way to make that. They're 2 steps ahead.
Whoa.
They're ahead of their time, he says, which is what we call them.
We always call it ahead of their time.
But as soon as the next step is built, then what they had thought of could be built on that, right? So he calls it the adjacent possible. Like basically you have to be in an environment where somebody is thinking of that next step that you haven't quite put together yet that you can then build on. Uh-huh. But if you're not in the proximity of people that are thinking that way, you're not going to discover your adjacent possible. And
that's really, really, really key.
That is the thing I think that we don't understand about relationships even.
Wow.
The reason more people can find their soulmates or whatever else with dating apps is because your pool of people just got very large. You could meet somebody that you would never have met in your normal proximity.
You're looking at your thing and you're like, yo, I'm getting 3 times as lucky as I ever did back home.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like all of a sudden your critical mass of what's possible opens up. And he brought out this great point in the book. And I thought that this was really interesting. And I noticed this, especially when we lived in a small town, is it's like, you might have somebody who's really interested in a subgenre of things. Like we had a dear friend who was like he was talented and he still is a talented, but really into making horror movies, like filming horror movies, which is definitely a subgenre in a small town, right? Amateur photo or like filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean, we had talks where it's like, dude, if you want to go on a date, don't lead out with the horror film thing. Right? Put on something other than a black shirt.
But yeah.
You're beautiful, man. Yeah. Like, seriously, go to your nice side for a sec. And then maybe she's into it. Right? Maybe you guys like sharpen axes or something.
But there's a whole genre of people that are into that. But there's not a big genre of people that are into that in Anchorage, Alaska.
Which is why I gave him my advice.
Go somewhere where there's lots. But this is the beautiful thing. The internet. I mean, because you need basically, in order for something to take off in a genre, you have to have enough critical mass, meaning enough people in there for it actually to catch on. You need enough people around that circle around you, thinking like you, liking the same things like you, for it actually to start to spread.
Wow.
And for relationships to be built, you need to find enough of your people, right?
Your belonging, right?
Yes.
Your sense of contribution. Right?
Your connectedness. You're like, they get me, I get them. Like,
yeah, there's nothing worse than being in a small town lonely because no one understands me. And everybody has that feeling of loneliness or misunderstood or, they'll catch it, they're going to catch up to where I'm at. I mean, it's truly, but what you're saying is there's a place for you, right? Like you can get there if you would go to where the pool's larger, right?
Yes, where the pool is
where
larger.
the network is more vibrant. How's
yeah,
that?
Yeah. You have more of ideas on the table. You have more people on the table. You have more everything that you can
more possibility right next to you, right in front of you.
Right? Adjacently possible.
Yeah, I love that. That's super good.
The cool thing is that we have all noticed, and this phenomenon is like, I often wonder, as somebody who reads a lot or looks at things, I'm always looking to like maybe criteria for why somebody has gotten the fame that they've gotten, or like what have they actually done or accomplished.
Of course.
And so sometimes the like skeptic in me is like, how did this person on TikTok who actually like they don't have any education in this area or like anything, like, and all of a sudden they're really famous and everybody's listening to them about this topic. And that's like such a phenomenon to me. Like, this is really weird.
Hey, the age of the self-appointed expert we are in.
We are in it. But it's not even just self-appointed. I think the thing that's most alarming or surprising to me in my like old school thinking is that they're not self-appointed. The public, the critical mass has appointed them to be that expert. Why do we have people that are now very, very famous, now doing things, who've never actually done anything significant in that category? They haven't written books. They don't teach conferences. They don't have a PhD in that. But all of a sudden they're the expert. And they're not the expert because they said they're the expert. They're the expert because they found a critical mass of people that are buying what they're selling.
Wow.
And that's the beauty of what the internet has done. It's now
both the beauty and the tragedy, because what you can do is have a bunch of people who like are possibly very naive.
Mm-hmm.
They have some maybe even twisted ideas collectively.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff absolutely happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why it's both beautiful and dangerous at the same time.
Exactly.
Right.
But either way, they're getting to their next possible.
Yes.
If we're talking about like success of getting their ideas out there,
yeah,
getting their innovation out there, getting their thoughts out there to be built, it's that kind of like you find your critical mass just by getting enough out there to find your people to collect to you.
That's so good.
To then appoint you.
Yeah.
And it works that way in relationships too, right? Like, let's be honest. When we talk about relationships, you have so many more relationships than just love relationships. You've got work relationships and school relationships and family relationships and so many
friendships.
Yes.
And, past friendships.
Exactly.
People you've just met. Yeah.
And no one would argue with the fact that you are going to have more of those and be a more successful.
What? More relationships? Yes.
You're going to be a more successful person or able to reach more and do more the more connections you have in those areas. Meaning, the more you're able to put your stuff out there and connect to more people, the farther you're going to get with where you're actually intending to go.
Every single time I meet someone and interact with them, my life changes.
Yes.
Every single time. And it may be significant and it may be insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
Just met a guy. I don't know if you were looking at some sort of ad calendar or something. We went to a car show because we have a 1969 Chevy. And we met a guy there who, and his wife, who are just, they're fabulous people.
Yep.
They're from New York. We went to dinner. I did some leather work for him on his interior. And I finally fixed the brakes on my Chevy and I polished it. That's it. And all of that came out of just that one interaction with them. Like it changed my life. It changed part of my life. We're going on a cruise. We're going on a cruise in like 3 weeks. And JJ's going to be there. Rob Green's going to be there. Ron's going to be there. And you were asking me, hey, are you looking forward to it? And the thing that came to my mind is every time I interact with people,
yeah,
my life changes.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out with when I'm talking to Rob Green over over a glass of wine or whatever.
Because they have different relationships.
Exactly. The network is just like boom. And so that's what I love about what you're saying is if you value creativity, if you value any sort of like innovation, growth, if you value those kinds of things in your life, then you have to value relationships.
Yes.
I mean, you have to start to, and that's the part of me that if I could go back and do anything over, I would be much more responsive and interactive in my relationships. In fact, a friend of mine emailed me the other day, and I've been working super hard out in Alaska. And it's like, once I get in work mode like that, I just have the hardest time keeping up with anything else besides, look, I'm going till 10:30 at night because I'm trying to get this roof put on this house,
Yeah.
And we had talked earlier in the summer, hey, I'm going to, I'll send you photos or whatever. I did none of that. I did none of that. And he emailed me. He's like, listen, asshole. Like,
he was probably nicer than
that.
No,
he actually said that. And he was like, the way that you don't talk to people has consequences.
Wow.
And if you do this your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to end up pretty lonely.
Wow. He's such a good friend for saying
Such
that.
a good friend. I called him an old bitch and we went back and forth. And so it was just.
But it was a good reminder
yes.
to you.
And what happened this year, and like you and us talking about this whole, it's like, oh my goodness, if I could have seen just my own selfishness, and even with my own selfishness, the incredible impact of maintaining relationships and the depth to who I would become, or, you know, my contribution to even bigger ideas, like all of that, that in my mind is so what life is about. It's what creativity is about. It's what contribution is about. It's what legacy is about. It's all of that. Like I want to high five as many people as I can.
Yes.
When I'm like 80.
Yeah.
And we're all looking at each other like, whoa.
Yeah.
We changed the world, folks.
Yes.
I don't know. That's just me.
No, that's really.
I don't mean to preach, but that is so vivid in my brain right now. All of these things are coming together for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I realized in reading this book is that it's actually scientific.
It's scientific. That's the beautiful.
It's scientific that if you want more influence, if you want more reach, if you want more growth, if you want more ideas, if you want to be a person that like can get your stuff out there, your thoughts, your, you know, your emotion, like if you want to find your people, you actually will have to go to a place, either virtually or in location, where you can find enough critical mass to find that.
Yes.
Because it will not happen without that. You will not be able to grow all your thoughts if you're not around people who are thinking about innovation in the same areas you're thinking about innovation. It simply won't work. So the notion, the thought that you can stay in your little Hobong town, but then make it big, or that you can do all these things, I'm just saying, science says otherwise.
Sure.
You're going to have to connect to a larger network no matter what. It doesn't work the other way.
Right. And you're going to get connected to the larger network either way, if it's that, you know, if it's that important. But that's a really, I love that reality.
Yes.
That is a truth that is really inescapable.
Yes. It's just so cool to think about it like that, because then you can kind of take the emotion out of it, and like you can try to stop being the anomaly who's like going to be the one who, and you can just go, actually, if I probably need to take this, I need to get enough out there. And so when I was reading this book, I just kind of like want to share with you, this is my takeaways from me reading the book. Like this is how I think.
This is what you wrote down in your green, one of 500 green journals.
I like green. That's why I did it that way. But
I love it.
These were my takeaways for my own self about like, Charity, if you want to grow in an area, this is what you're going to have to do.
Bring it.
Or these are the thoughts you need to kind of keep in mind.
Drop it.
Okay, ready? You need to live or be physically in the location where people do what you want to do. For me,
that's you.
That's anybody. I think these apply to anybody, but I wrote them like as my own takeaways.
Okay.
But I believe, given the science, that you do need to live or be somehow connected to people that are doing what you want to do. You have to, Tony Robbins says, find the person who's doing what you want to do and just emulate them.
Right.
Right. But it's the same concept. Like be following on social media the people doing what you want to do. Like somehow be attached to them.
Right.
And
I think that's
yourself.
a really good, back to the Tony Robbins comment, I've been given the same advice where I think you do need to pick, or you do need to identify those people who, there was a time in my life where, I wanted to write more and I wanted to be, profound in it, and that kind of stuff. And I remember one of our boys asking us, can you point to anybody who you would like to be like? Just point to like a writer. And then it was like, oh man, that's really good advice.
Yes.
Dr. Seuss, man. Like
minus the racism. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Right,
I forgot all about that. Yeah.
But no, I mean,
But exactly. Like
Yeah.
point to, you know, C.S. Lewis or whatever,
Mhm.
or, you know, point to Walt Whitman, you
Yeah.
know, or whoever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be everything about that person, but know what the people you want to do, what they're doing, where they are.
Yeah.
Like for me, for instance, it's like if I want to be involved in federal child welfare law, I'm going to have to go where there's think tanks about federal child welfare laws. And they're not in a lot of places.
Yeah.
That means mostly you're going to be, you know, in San Fran or on the East Coast. You know, you got to go where people are thinking like you.
That's so good. And okay, so again, back to C.S. Lewis and writing and creativity. It was, I mean, I think I watched a movie, or I know I know this is a fact. I'll have to fact check it. But he and the writer of The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yes, they would get together.
And it's like those, and it was like, there was like a third guy. I can't remember.
It was a study group. They had a study group.
In a coffee shop. Talk about network of ideas. I mean, now The Hobbit comes out, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the Chronicles of Narnia,
like read each
and
other's
Lord
stuff.
of the Rings, and like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
Point taken, Cher. This is beautiful.
Okay. The second one was seek, and there's 10 of these. Okay, ready? So number 2 is seek out, be friends with, and follow people that are doing what you want to do. Same concept, right? Not just be in proximity, but seek them out, follow them, emulate them.
Comment on their stuff, get to know them, try hard to interact. I love it.
Okay, number 3. Claim your identity. And here's what I mean by this. Be an artist, entrepreneur, inventor, writer, etc. Just saying that doesn't, like, those things don't necessarily have standards. You could just say, well, I'm a writer. And I'm like, okay, but how do I know you're a writer?
Right.
Well, if you write.
Yeah.
Then I know you're a writer.
I always say that all the time. There's so many people, I'm a creative. Okay, show me anything you've created.
Exactly.
I'm an artist. Where's your art again? Like that, I get it, but there is something to be said for not just a theorist, but a practitioner.
Yes.
You're going to be much more believable if you say you're an artist, if you have some art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of, and I know that this is a different thing, but I always think of that Forrest Gump line, like stupid is as stupid does. Well, creative is as creative does.
Yeah.
Innovation.
Does being the sort of key word.
Yeah. Like if you actually want to be that thing, then own your identity and be that. Create the things that are actually going to make you that.
Which is risky, vulnerable,
Yep.
hard, but beautiful.
In order to do something, in order to be something, you have to do something.
Yeah, I love it. Go.
Okay, number 4. You have to put enough out there to be seen and recognized.
Ooh.
So in other words, those people that made it big on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, they had to put enough content.
Yeah.
One thing of content does not actually get you the critical mass. It might get you a short flash. But in order to have the critical mass and the critical reach and impact, you're going to need to put enough content out for it to reach all of the people in actual depth and breadth that you need it to make true connections.
Yeah. I've noticed just now having a son in the music career, there is such a thing as, I think he calls it an evergreen song. So within all of your content, a lot of times one thing or a small amount of everything you put out will be sort of your bread and butter, the thing that really is like, that's remarkable about you. That's what most people connect to. But I love what you're saying. You have to continue. I mean, content is king. It used to be cash is king. Now it's content is king.
I love that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
the new rich is content creators, right?
Yes. Yeah. You have to put enough out there for it to be seen and for you to find your critical mass.
Okay.
This idea, number 5, of fake it till you make it. Well, actually, I think it's more of like, you have to have an element of that and kind of get over your imposter syndrome. But the real thing is that the people that are going to be most successful are the ones who are going to be upfront and ask other people that they admire for help, because people do want to help people.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself out there. And the thing I think that's cool about Instagram and all that stuff now is like, there is a real person on the other end of that DM and they will respond.
Yes.
And you can now, the middleman has a lot of times been removed. You can directly message people and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. That's a new option for adjacent possibility, for proximity to who you want to be.
Read the statement one more time. What was this one?
Be upfront and people will lead a hand. You don't need to always fake it till you make it. You can actually ask for help. Right.
And I would add to that a lesson that I learned. I can't remember from who, but perfection is just never get anything done.
Exactly.
Like if you're waiting for it to be perfect, that's not what's going on with you. Typically what it is you're just scared.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 6, there are real people attached to those accounts. Reach out and don't be a troll. Obviously.
Oh, trolls.
I don't even get me started on the cowardice of people. But
Yeah.
number 7, see every person and thought as a connection point you need.
That's what we just talked about.
I love this.
So important.
For me, I just keep thinking, and that was the good reminder. It's like every person you meet, every thought that they have is like that added, like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And that will then be a connection for what I'll need in the future. So I'm going to take all of
changes
that.
the direction, the very direction of your life.
Yes.
Show me your friends, I'll show you your future,
Yep.
right? That whole
Yep.
process is absolutely true. Every
love that.
interaction you have with a person will change the course of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love it.
And you can harness that. You can like,
Oh, yeah. You can
lean into
direct
that.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can choose that.
yes. Yeah. Let's see. Harness the magnitude of the virtual.
Wait,
We've already
what?
talked about that.
Harness the magnitude.
Understand that you have so much reach because you now have a virtual self that can be reaching the
Oh.
rest of the world that you never, when I looked at our Spotify thing the other day, here we are, this little hobunk, we got, hardly any people that listen to us,
Content is king. We're just going to keep working.
Exactly. But when it said like people listen in 7 countries, I thought, what other place would that be a possibility?
There's no other world we lived in that except this one right now
Right.
where it's possible.
Yeah.
But it is possible.
So cool.
Adjacently possible.
Yes. And I liked this thought. Don't consider yourself an outcast. Consider yourself someone who hasn't yet connected with your people.
Mm.
Stop considering yourself the person who is the other, and just understand that you haven't found the others of your other.
Wow.
And look for them, because there are lots of people who dig the same things you do, but maybe you haven't put yourself out there to find them yet, and you should.
Did that happen to you?
Yes.
That's
Totally.
so cool. When
Totally.
you working,
Yeah, like
working on your doctorate or what?
yeah, I'm just kind of nerdy about like policy things. This is an interesting thing because I'm kind of nerdy about like policy, or not necessarily politics, but like how systems work and management and organizational structure. And like, I only had a couple of friends in my life before that I could talk, like females, that I could talk to those things about. It was always really hard for me to be able to connect on that stuff with many women, because most women are like, this is so freaking boring. I don't want to talk about it. But I might have a couple of friends, but then connecting now to like lots of policy people around the country, I realized like, I'm not a freak. There's lots of people who totally dig talking about that stuff as much as I do. And I didn't know that they really existed.
Women. Yeah.
Where I'm like,
Sharp.
this is
sharp
this
women,
is
dude.
super fun to like sit and nerd out for like,
Yeah.
when we would get together for school or whatever. It's like we could nerd out for hours and hours and days on stuff that no one else in the world could give a heck about. But, we did. And it was
Right.
fun to find those people and not feel like I was like the weirdo who wanted to talk about that stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, so fun.
Because you did. I mean, I would say just, observing you, that was a struggle for you.
Totally.
You felt a little lonely in not only, the nerdiness and, all of the inner workings of the systems and stuff like that, but also just even in parts of your personality and parts
Yeah.
of, parts of your ambition and all this other stuff. It's been beautiful to watch. The connections that you've been making have been affirming. Hey, I have people,
Yes. And
I am peculiar, but I do have my people.
and it has done what the science says it will do. It actually has made me more innovative in my thought, more
Yes.
those small connections has made me like, oh, now I can think of something I hadn't thought of before. Especially my friends who think very differently than me. I came from a very conservative background. Most of them came from a very liberal background.
Yeah.
I love that because now all of a sudden their thoughts are making me go like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. But now that makes sense. That one thing I was thinking, and now I can connect it to, and they're doing the same thing. And that's the
you've done a
beauty.
really, listening to some of the conversations you've had with your, I would say, extremely liberal friends, where you have, more libertarian thoughts, that kind of stuff gets really interesting when you're explaining all of that.
It's been so fun finding my people,
Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's just, we all find our people more. But,
And you have one more?
yeah. Realize the best. I like this one.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay.
Realize that your best expression is tied to other people's expression.
Okay. That sounds codependent.
Mm-hmm. But you need other people to get to your next best thought.
Wow. Okay. Can you just give us a quick unpack?
Yeah. I mean, I just think you're not going to have the big leap aha moment. You're going to have the nudge off someone else's nudge, off someone else's nudge, off someone else's nudge.
So based on Johnson's contention, networks generate ideas.
Yes.
So ideas are less of an epiphany and more of a network, a nudge within a network.
Yeah. And you're not going to get there without other people's thoughts. So your expression is absolutely dependent on someone else's expression. Your thought is just a build out of someone else's thought. And that's what I love about this in the context of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We need each other to get to our next adjacent possible.
Yeah.
We have to have each other. And the more each others we have, the more possibilities are opened up for us.
There's a Buddhist monk who I appreciate, Thich Nhat Hanh. And I've said this before, I think in a previous podcast, but his whole thing, one of his big, theological, existential, philosophical Buddhist points is this idea of interbe and how interdependent. There's no such thing as intrinsic, a created person. We are all born interdependent.
Yes.
Dependent origination is what he calls it. And he's like, try being born into the world without the need for oxygen. Try to, or without the need for all of these. You are not self-sustaining.
No.
You are completely dependent on all of these things around you, which makes you way more obviously ecological, but it makes it, I think it has a humility to it and a beauty to it to go like, I wouldn't even be able to take a breath.
Yeah.
Without all of these other factors.
Yes.
And I think ideas are we need to start to really look at them like that too. We are so interwoven with each other in humanity.
Yes.
That you're right. I mean, those ideas gestate, they nudge along, they're built within networks, and then they amalgamate from time to time, into absolutely life-changing things.
Yeah. Your creativity is interdependent.
Yeah.
Your innovation, your growth, all of those things are interdependent on the systems and networks that you're part of. And I remember you listened to Johnson's TED Talk and you walked away and you came home and you were like, that phrase that he says.
Yeah.
Chance favors the connected mind.
Chance favors the connected mind. And I would put in a placeholder for that too. It's love favors the connected mind.
Yes.
Joy, favors the innovation.
Yeah.
Favors the connected mind.
Yep.
We're
all just
success.
Yes.
It favors the all of it.
Your expression and the expression you want to have is absolutely dependent on the expression of those around you.
I love it. What a beautiful beautiful discovery, babe. Thank you for this one.
Yeah, this was a really great book. Like, definitely, we would encourage you to go read it.
And I am sure that we are going to revisit this at certain iterations of the podcast.
Yeah, there's a zillion other ideas he has in the book, and this is just a couple of them. And I probably didn't do them justice, but
we'll unpack it over the next few years.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll put the link in the description, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, babe, wait. How do we end this?
By saying thank you.
Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you. There's nothing more encouraging than you hitting that like button and commenting.
And don't forget to subscribe.
And I know there's more. You have a list. Might as well go down the list.
Right. Okay. Watch the video of this podcast on our Beautiful Step YouTube channel or on our website where you can actually download transcripts and show notes of the episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
If today's episode made your together even better, tell someone.
Okay, now.
Right now.
Today.
Okay.
You can take one step.
It's just one step.
toward the beautiful relationship you want in your life.
You got this.